Up on the top here we have the pressure gauge, which is a 0 to 1. The operating pressure of the boiler is a maximum 75 psi, so you've given a little bit of difference in the thing. You'll find normal steaming pressure will be around 50 to 60 psi in this engine. Here we have the safety valve, and this is preset to release boiler pressure if it exceeds the 75 psi. Just below the safety valve we have the filler nut, and this is unscrewed to fill the boiler, normally done with a syringe. There's an O-ring seal on the bottom of the nut, and it just needs to be a finger tight, and that will withstand any of the pressure that's produced within the boiler. Next in line is the exhaust tank, which is this item. It collects the oily residue from the exhaust and removes it from the vent line. The exhaust flows through the line down into the bottom of the tank, where it swirls around in a vortex. The heavy oil or condensate drops into the bottom, and the steam vents back up through the pipe work and up through the flue pipe, and through that pipe just up here and up through there. That's the exhaust box. To empty it, you just unscrew the plug and use the syringe supplied to drain the oily condensate out the bottom. And this is best done while the condensate is still on the warm side, and it's much easier to remove. If it's left until it goes cold, the oil will build up into a sludge and it's much harder to remove. Next is the forward and reverse control on the lever here. This is the connection for the servo, and it's simply forward and reverse. It's either when it's in the middle, it's in neutral, and the engine will stop. And it's best when moving the control to have it into neutral and then into reverse. And that's the connection. It's the gas tank and the removal and filling of the gas tank. To remove the gas tank, simply unscrew the knurled nut on the connection, such. Disconnect, move the tank out and place on a firm level surface. Having fitted the refill nozzle to the disposable gas canister, you then place the nozzle over the refill valve, centering the nozzle on the valve, and just slowly depress the whole system. When the gas is filling, it will vent a gas mixture out of the vent hole. When the tank reaches the full capacity of where the liquid is supposed to be, it will vent liquid like that out of the system. And that happens, just take the canister away and your gas tank is filled, ready for the boiler operation. I normally let the gas tank stand for around 5 to 6 minutes to reach room temperature again, because the filling of the gas tank makes it relatively cold. Once it's reached room temperature, then just put it back into the holder and screw your connection back on, and it just needs to be a firm finger tight. and we're ready to go and light the boiler now. Now before lighting the boiler, make certain that the steam control valve, the globe valve next to the steam dome, is turned off and the radiator control valve is in the off position. The filler nut is down firm and everything is ready to light. And what we do now is remove the flue pipe, take the barbecue gas lighter and light it above the chimney and turn the gas on. The burner is now lit and we're ready to raise steam. Put the flue pipe back on and just got to rate now and raise the steam pressure. Looking through the back of the burner into the fire tube, and you can see that the flame is a nice light blue colour. Right there. That's the colour we're looking for. That indicates that it's burning at the best possible mixture. We're now just 4 minutes into the firing and the pressure is around 30 psi and slowly climbing. Once it reaches the 65-70 psi, we'll open up the valve and start the engine. While we're waiting for the boiler to come up to pressure, I'll just point out the main oiling points on the crank. You've got the 3 main bearing caps, the eccentrics on both sides, and the conrods, the bottom of the conrods. They need to have oil put on them around every 20 to 30 minutes of run time. I use a 1040 weight motorcycle oil and I seem to get a pretty good result from that. And lubricate the moving joints on the eccentrics up the top about every run, and that should keep everything well lubed. We're just on 10 minutes into the pressure, boiler time, and the pressure is now on 75 psi. The gas control valve is just cut in and turned the burner down, and we will now turn on the steam. Open up the valve and then the radiator control valve. The boiler pressure is sitting on 65 psi. engine's now turning in a clockwise direction when looking from the front. To put it into reverse, simply move the lever to midway till the engine stops, and then into reverse. I'll see if we can take the engine revs. This is a mechanical counter and gives a fairly reliable rev count. Just leave it on the crank for a minute. The engine appears to be just ticking over, but it's probably sitting on around 550, 600 revs. Steam pressure is around 60 psi. Okay, it's 1 minute and around 630 revs. It will go down a lot slower by just turning down a bit more. Just remember, in real life these engines only probably revved out to about 80 revs a minute. Let's see what we get now. I'm putting a reasonable amount of force back onto the crank. "45 seconds gone." "1 minute." That's 5:29. Normally this in the Maree Felling, I would imagine running a 70mm prop, you'd be sitting on these revs between the 400 to 800 max. We'll back up the burner end, and I'll just zoom in on the back of the burner. Whoops. The flame is still the blue-green colour, which indicates good combustion on the burner side. And we'll just have a look at the water level, and the water level is there. And we've been running now for a good 6 minutes or so. We've just moved around to the other side of the engine. Boiler pressure is still sitting on 60 psi, and the engine just ticking over at the 500 revs. I won't run it too quickly. It's only had about 40 minutes of run, and probably still needs another 40 minutes before you start doing any high sort of revs in it. I just changed the engine into the reverse direction and let it run that way for a short time. The boiler pressure is maintaining the 55 psi. And now around 15 minutes into the run time, engine's still ticking over quite well. Boiler pressure is between 55 and 60, and still working quite happily. We're about 18 minutes into the run time. Engine is ticking over at around 600 revs a minute. Boiler pressure still sitting on 60 psi and just ticking over nicely. We've now been running for 25 minutes, engine's still ticking over at the same pace. We will now shut the steam plant down, and what we do first is turn the gas tank off, which turns the burner off. And let the steam run down. Boiler pressure is still sitting on about 40 psi, slowly falling. Down to 20 psi. Down to about 12. And the needle is just registering above the 10 psi mark and slowing down. So now we shut the steam down. And turn the control valve off. And that's it. That's the run. I normally leave it sit for about 5 or 6 minutes and then come back and drain the exhaust and open up the full control valve. While waiting for the boiler to cool down, just take off the top of the exhaust box and drain out some of the condensate. Condensate should be a very light milky colour. Which signifies the oil in the mix. That's the condensate. And just screw the top back on. And that's it. While the engine is still warm, I like to put a little bit of oil around the bearing surfaces. Just a couple of drops. on the Conrod. And that just helps to protect it and keep it well lubricated. And that's it for the running of the engine. I wasn't happy with the other setup on the displacement lubricator, and I've changed it. The reason was that there wasn't, I didn't think, enough oil getting through into the engine, and that was because we had it mounted on an angle to the main steam line. I've taken off the original one and I've made up a new setup which goes directly into the intake manifold, and I've also fitted a drain cock on the bottom of the lubricator, so that instead of trying to get your hand in down through here to unscrew a nut and drain the water out of the bottom, all you've got to do now is just grab a hold of the silicone tube, lift it up, and it will automatically drain into this tube down the bottom here. And when it's drained, just pushing back down and that closes it off. The valve on the side only needs to be opened around 1 to 1.5 turns on this particular one. It has a much coarser thread on the needle, and it is supplying the oil to the inside probably twice as much as what the other one was doing, so I'm much happier with the performance of it. Unfortunately, it protrudes out the side of the tray probably about another 15-20 millimeters more than what the other one did, but unfortunately there's not much we can do about it. That is the traditional way we have been mounting them. I was just trying to save a little bit of width on doing it the other way, but unfortunately it won't work properly. Okay, so we're all ready to go now, and yeah, happy steaming.